Today, we are going to be talking about the hardest times we've ever had in our businesses and what we did to survive. Because owning a business is not always a highlight reel. Am I right, Laura?
It's 100% true.
It is not a highlight reel. With me in this series called So You Want to Start a Business is my amazing friend, Laura Benson. Laura is the owner of Philly Flair, an online boutique that she's built up to be a multi-million-dollar brand. She also owns other businesses and products as well. Plus, on top of that, she is a wife, she has 2 kids at home, and she is currently 6 months pregnant with her 3rd. Do you see why I call her Superwoman? She is Superwoman. And so, Laura, even though you have a very successful business, I know that wasn't always the case for you. And I know you've gone through very difficult periods of time in your business where you thought you were going to potentially lose everything. Could you just walk us through what that tough season was and just share your story with us?
Yeah, so first off, I've been in business over 11 years. And so there's a lot of ups and downs, and so I think that's important to remember. But there was one particular season that was extremely rough. I was pregnant with my 2nd. My dad was going through chemo, and social media, as we all know, makes a lot of changes. And that was the first time since I had started my business that it rolled out a lot of changes that I was not ready for. And so we took a massive hit in sales, and clearly I actually ended up having my 2nd child, and my dad was still, going through just a really hard period of our life. My priorities were not focused 100% on the business, which I would not change.
Yeah.
It's just it was the season of life. And so it was very tough. I ended up, our sales went down a lot. I had to lay off people. It was one of the most hardest emotional things I've ever been through. When I went through that, I think for me, it really humbles you. And I had never had an experience like that. I had always had growth from the time I had started my company. And I think it was just a really good experience to understand that things change in life and nothing ever stays the same. And so even when I had to let people go, for me, it was a reminder of okay, I know that at the end of the day, I'm doing the best I can for my family and what it's going to take to save this business.
Yeah. And I think it teaches you too that there's so many things in life we can't control in every area, especially business. I know for me, so I own a consulting business. I do influencer marketing and I advise tech startups. And this was 3 months before the birth of our 2-year-old Pierce. And at that time, I had one major client. I had put all my eggs in one basket, so probably not the smartest thing. And I was kind of banking on this client to have after maternity leave as well. Well, what happened is my client called me a couple months before Pierce was born, and he basically told me that he had not been transparent with me or anyone at the company where they were financially. The company was totally imploding, and I found out in one phone call, I lost my major client. He would not be able to pay me for 6 months of work. Ouch. Holy ouch. And I did not have that client back after maternity leave. Mm-hmm. So I really went through a period of time where I lost it all in that one call. So yeah, very difficult season where I'm shoot, well now I have to build everything back up from scratch after having a baby. You know?
And that was 100% how I felt. I think it was I had to go back to just kind of grassroots, dig in the weeds and figure things out again.
Yeah. And Laura, after you went through that tough season, what were some of the top learning lessons you had and how did that change your business?
Yeah, so I would say that summer I really hit rock bottom, and I will never forget this. One day I was out on a run on our gravel road after I had our son, and I finally was I had success, and it was very humbling to think about could I possibly lose it all and what people would think of me. And I finally had to humble myself enough to be this isn't about me and what people think of me. This is about what I have built and if it's possible to save it. And so on that run one day, I was finally okay, God, I'm going to give this 150%. And if it does not work out, that means this is not the plan for my life. And it was a good run. But at least I will know at the end of the day that I did everything possible that I could to make it succeed. And then I would be able to move on from that.
Yeah. Oh man, those periods of times can be so tough because I know I felt like a complete failure when I lost it all. And I also felt a burden of going into motherhood. I wanted to be a successful business owner for my son, and I already felt like I was failing him in a way. It was a really weird period of time. Two big things that I learned during that period is, number one, I would no longer work for a client if they did not pay me for 30 days. So even just like those little things that you learn, right? And the other thing that I learned is I had let friendship get way in the way of business because I was so close with that big client. He was more like a friend to me.
Yeah.
And so when he kept telling me like, I will pay you, we're doing great, I trusted him. And I kept working for him and I trusted him. I took off my business hat and I put on my friend hat. And I learned the hard way that when you're a business owner, you just cannot allow that to happen, especially in situations like that.
And I think the biggest thing, my takeaway from that experience was that you can never get too complacent.
Yeah.
It was a really good learning lesson for me. And just knowing that you're never above going back to square one and changing whatever is not working, no matter what anyone in the business tells you. As the owner, you always have the right and the ability to do that.
Yes. And then what did you have to do personally for yourself, both like spiritually, mentally, emotionally, to position you back in a healthy place? Because we know going through tough seasons can put you in really dark places. What did you have to do to put yourself in a healthy place where you could learn and then thrive after this tough season?
I really had to rely on my husband and God, most importantly. And after that experience, just like that day was kind of a revelation for me, as weird as that sounds, of deciding to lay it out there and know that, like, all right, I'm all in, and I'm at peace with knowing that if this works, it's just because of God's hand. And I think when you rely on faith and you truly decide that, like, I'm going to give it everything I have. I wasn't just sitting back and seeing if, okay, God, are you going to make this happen? But when you decide to go all in and you know that if I give it 120%, then the rest is in God's hands, so to speak, it really does bring you a lot of peace.
Yes, that is the thing. Having God at your center of your life and your business can bring you abundant peace that otherwise would be lost.
100%.
Which really comes into play during hard times, right?
Yes.
For me, I not only felt like a failure during that hard time in my business, but I also had immense anger. I was very, very angry at my client because I felt like he had betrayed me and manipulated me. And I really had to rely on my advisors in my business because they came in from an outsider's perspective with a lot more years and wisdom on me. So they were able to speak into me and tell me things and even tell me like what to write back, what to say, when I was honestly too angry to think for myself at that time. And similar to you, I really relied on my husband because a role of a husband is a lot of things, but their role is also a protector. I felt very protected by Chad during that time when I felt very exposed and vulnerable. And I'm so grateful for that too. At least you know you have one person in your corner, right?
Yeah, and I think that's how I felt. I felt really grateful for that too, because no matter, I felt like such a failure too.
Yeah.
And I hadn't failed yet, but just being in that position, knowing that that was a possibility, I had never been there and felt so vulnerable. And to know that my husband was going to support me. And even when we talked about it and I said, what happens if this doesn't work out? And he's going to say, well, then we say it was a heck of a run.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep, exactly. And that's all you can do. And man, it just shows you the power of one person.
Yes, it does.
Of what they can do. So ladies, your challenge this week is to prepare yourself for when you have a hard time or hit a speed bump in your business or at your job, because that will happen. So what are things that you can do now? Is it having mentors in your life? Is it creating more legally binding contracts, keeping tabs on your numbers, really growing your relationship with God so you have a steady foundation of faith during that tough time? Because when you feel like you might almost lose it all, preparation can help to save you.